normally Batterskull is pretty backbreaking once it hits play out of any deck versus Rug Delver, but not necessarily game over like it normally is.
Yeah, Stephen Mann, his list of Rug Delver is a little unorthodox. 2 main deck copies of Dismember and 2 main deck copies of Gitaxian Probe.
Yeah, Gitaxian Probe is particularly powerful out of the Rug Delver shell because it's a free roll card to help boost your threshold for Nimble Mongoose. Threshold being an old school mechanic that hasn't really seen any sort of reprint because they're really afraid of making graveyard-based cards too powerful.
Yeah, Gitaxian Probe actually interacts favorably with all of Stephen Mann's creatures. It's a card in the graveyard for Nimble Mongoose, of course, a card in the graveyard for Tarmogoyf, an additional spell to reveal to Delver of Secrets as well. So
yeah,
it really synergizes with each piece of the deck.
Yeah, it's also a great way for Steven to really map out how he should play the next few turns of the game as well. If he sees Michael has particular disruption spells, he can try to play around them. He can sequence his threats in a way that it lines up poorly for Michael Major's removal spells, or even just knows that the coast is clear to not play around something like Daze and just jam a Tarmogoyf on turn 2. So,
information really critical in a format where Daze and Spell Pierce and similar cards are in such heavy rotation.
Yeah, completely agree. Steven here on the play, taking a look at his opening 7. Can't really get a good glimpse of it at the moment, but looks like he's keeping because Majors decided to pick up his hand to take a look.
And Majors with a hand featuring multiple Wastelands, but not sure anything in the way of colored mana.
I believe, I think you're right, actually. So he has 2 altered Wastelands, which look a little different when you're trying to find them on camera, but a Gitaxian Probe, I believe, and he's on the draw, and Wasteland is really important in this matchup. If Steven leads off with just turn 1 land Delver and not land Ponder, a turn 1 Wasteland could just buy him like 3 or 4 turns until Steven's able to actually find another land. So I don't hate the draws that are a little land light if they're Wastelands, especially if you're on the draw and you have a turn or 2 to actually draw into the land. So. But it looks like he's going to play it safe and mulligan, and rightly so, because there were no lands until, I think, 3 or 4 down. So.
That would have been a disastrous keep. Anyhow, welcome to the final Stephen Mann against Michael Majors. Once again, Star City Games Legacy Open here in Atlanta. Remember that during this match, we're going to be giving away a full year of Star City Games premium content, so make sure to stay tuned for that.
Do you know how many articles come out in 1 year on Star City Games Premium?
I would guess it's probably in the neighborhood of 1,000, right? 365 times 2.5-ish, 2.75 articles.
That is a lot.
1,000.
That's a lot.
Video content as well.
Yep. If you go to Star City Games and you have Premium, you can access my favorite thing on the website is mine and Brad's Versus video series, which we play popular matchups for Standard, Legacy, and occasionally Modern, which you'll actually see this week leading up to the Grand Prix that Star City Games is hosting in where?
We'll get to that later.
Okay.
But actually, Star City doesn't post on the weekends, so it's probably closer to 700-ish, 800.
Right.
It's a lot of content. It's a lot of content.
It's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff.
And I really think that if you're looking to improve your game, if you're a regular player on like, you know, the F&M circuit or the Star City Games Open Series or even just like a PTQ grinder, the premium side does give you access to a lot of information that not everyone is privy to. You can learn a lot about, you know, playing specific matchups, specific sideboarding techniques, potentially just learning the nuances of new archetypes, and it's the premium membership is pretty valuable.
So Stephen Mann going to lead off the finals here with an alternate cost Gitaxian Probe. Michael reveals his 6-card hand of Delver Secrets, Daze, Tundra, Misty Rainforest, Source of Plowshare, and another Daze, a very solid 6-card hand for Michael.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to comment. This seems like a very reasonable 6-card hand for Majors, and he has the potential to get back in the game even though he mulliganed and he's on the draw. So
Steven draws a card. And that information is really valuable, too. He knows there's no Wasteland in Michael's hand, for example. So he has some idea how he wants to sequence his opening turns. I really like Gitaxian Probe also alongside Stifle, as it gives you the information on, you know, if your opponent is susceptible to it and when you want to hold up that 1 mana.
Yeah, and looks like Michael's not too prone to it at the moment. His likely start is just going to be turn 1 Delver, with Days backup. Potentially turn 1 Swords of Plowshares with Days backup if Steven leads off with the Delver of Secrets of his own. Swords of Plowshares being particularly powerful, though, against Tarmogoyf, which could be a nuisance.
Force of Will to draw for Michael. Michael plays a Tundra and a Delver of his own.
Yeah, so no fight over the opponent's Delver of Secrets here from Michael. He's just going to be content to sort of save that Swords of Plowshares for later. Hopefully snagging Tarmogoyf with it. But, you know, if Steven's able to flip his Delver next turn, it could be troublesome for Michael if he's not able to flip his own and actually start the race. If Steven's able to actually destroy, you know, his opponent's Delver of Secrets, and then, you know, actually Michael has no more threats left to apply pressure on the swing back. So
Delver of Secrets comes across. Michael declines the trade, falling to 19.
So whenever a Delver doesn't flip in this matchup, from the Rug Delver's side anyway, it's going to be a land which could be important against a Wasteland draw, or it's going to be a creature which could be important against a heavy mana draw. And since Steven doesn't play another land this turn, to me that looks like he doesn't, or he just has a bunch of creatures in hand, potentially a couple counter spells, maybe a Lightning Bolt, but no access to red mana.
So Steven declines to play anything into the face of that Daze. Michael flips the Delver of Secrets into Insectile Aberration and comes across.
Yeah, Steven here potentially with a Dismember, but getting that Daze is pretty brutal considering the high amount of life loss from it. So.
And Steven says, I will take it.
Yeah, I have a feeling that that Lightning Bolt is going to be targeting that opposing Delver of Secrets pretty soon.
But remember, Michael is aware that Dismember is in the deck, so he's trying, or that Stifle rather is in the deck, so he's trying to be mindful of that as well. You see it end of turn Dismember from Steven, falling to 10 life.
Yeah, all the way down to 10 now. 2 from the probe, 1 from the fetch. Honestly, if I were Michael here, I think I would probably just go ahead and main phase fetch with the Misty Rainforest to find the red mana. Potentially using that on the Delver of Secrets as opposed to the Swords of Plowshares, though with Steven at such a low life total already, the Bolt could be the final points of damage. However, playing around Stifle here just by fetching out the red source could be a play that he would want to make, and then using a Daze to counter the Dismember.
So Michael's going to go ahead here and sacrifices Misty Rainforest, finds a Volcanic Island.
Yeah, a smart play here I think would be to not Lightning Bolt anything, but to return the Volcanic Island to his hand. That way it would protect it from Wasteland, so that he has access to Lightning Bolt in a few turns. And I believe that's what he's going to do, and probably decline actually bolting, but instead opts to make the safe trade here, bolt for Delver, and hoping to ride his current flip Delver to victory.
So we'll see if Steven is able to find an answer to this Delver or additional mana. He has instead just Nimble Mongoose. Michael declines today's and goes to his turn and draws Wasteland.
That is a beating, and I think this game is going to be over right now.
Wasteland on the tropical island, and now Steven in a ton of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, he basically has to have a bolt in hand and a lot of counter spells, and then draw a way to fetch red and bolt the Delver, because a Dismember is no longer going to cut it since he's about to go down to 4, and Major's hand has a Daze and a Force of Will and another blue card, so this game virtually locked up.
Michael replays the Volcanic Island, attempts to resolve a Delver of Secrets.
Yeah, I mean, Steven's hand looks like it's just full of green creatures, Lightning Bolt, and a Force Will with a blue spell, but if he forces here, he knows he's going to get dazed, and then he's just dead. He draws for the turn, doesn't draw land, and is effectively KO'd.
So Steven never got past the first land here. He fought gamely for a few turns, but now simply packs it up, and we are going to be quickly going to a second game as Michael Majors up a game and critically breaking serve, as winning on the draw in these kind of matchups not very easy to do.
And on a mulligan, too. I think that's key. Majors here able to hit his land drops and keep pace, even though he was on the draw, because Steven Mann failed to draw a land off of his Gataxian Probe and subsequent draw steps.
Welcome back to the booth, StarCityGames.com Legacy Open here in Atlanta. We're in the finals. Patrick Sullivan, Todd Anderson. Before we delve into the sideboarding, we have...
Delve into the sideboarding.
Get it? That one actually wasn't even on purpose. We have a year of Star City Games premium content to give out. And as we like to do towards the end of the show, we make this one a little bit on the easier side, but we want to make sure everyone has the information they need.
Sure.
Where are we going to be next week? Now, there isn't a Star City Games Open, but rather a Grand Prix.
There's no Open?
There is no Open, and I know...
So we don't want to compete with ourselves?
Yeah.
What kind of policy is that?
I'm not thrilled about there being no Open either, but there is a Grand Prix going on next week that has already shattered the constructed tournament.
Shattered
attendance.
is strong. Broken is more appropriate.
It's going to end up being shattered.
It is.
Anyway, we passed it by one. It's semantics. It's shattered. We shattered it. Shattered the constructed Grand Prix record, attendance record already with a few days ago in pre-registration. What city are we going to be in? Tweet your answer at SCG Live, hashtag SCG Premium, and one of you will be selected for a full year of Star City Games premium content. Moving on to the sideboard here. We have Stephen Mann here. I have his sideboard in front of me. 2 Grim Lavancers, 3 Submerges, a Spell Pierce, a Flusterstorm, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, a Surgical Extraction, 3 Pyroblasts, a Meddling Click, and a True Name Nemesis. I like bringing in additional copies of Pyroblast, as he does need to fight over True Name Nemesis. It's a card that he's not really that well equipped to handle outside of countering it. I like bringing in a True Name Nemesis of his own, as the Blue-White-Red Delver deck is especially soft to True Name Nemesis. And I potentially like bringing in the Grim Lavamancers as well, additional threats, and something that can pin down both Delver Secrets and Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah, I mean, you can see there's a lot of parallels in these sideboards. They both have access to Flusterstorm, Grim Lavamancer, and just a smattering of ways to interact with like combo decks and sometimes control decks. I believe that Michael is going to be bringing in the Swords of Plowshares here because fighting over Delver and Tarmogoyf is going to be really important in the early turns of the game. Having access to 8 one-mana removal spells is going to be key, whereas Steve Mann only has access to 6, and 2 of which are Dismember, which are quite detrimental to the life total because of the Phyrexian mana required to cast them.
I think that I consider Dismember to be a necessary evil in Tarmogoyf on Tarmogoyf type matchups. Less so here. Michael Majors' removal creatures are basically either True Name Nemesis, which can't really be handled by removal at all, or creatures small enough to Lightning Bolt. So Steven might be able to get away from Dismember in this matchup.
Yeah, I think the Grim Lavamancer is probably good from both sides. I think it's actually better out of the Rug Delver list because it has both Delver of Secrets and Stoneforge Mystic to attack. Whereas from Michael's side, his Grim Lavamancers are basically only going to be able to kill Delver of Secrets and go to the Dome. But I think they're both fine cards to have. You really want to up your threat density a little bit, decrease your Force of Will count, make sure that your threats are almost always 1 for 1-ing as opposed to 2 for 1-ing, or 1 for 2-ing, excuse me. Force of Will, not really a card you really want to see in this matchup. I do actually enjoy bringing in Flusterstorm in this sort of a matchup because there are some early Daze battles or Stifle battles, and being able to Flusterstorm and just kind of clear the path for... for example, if you have access to 2 fetch lands and a blue mana, and you go fetch, your opponent stifles, you go in response fetch again, and they stifle again, you just get to 2 for 1 them with the Flusterstorm. So this is particularly important when fighting over something like a Brainstorm, so that you can make sure you're shuffling away the chaff, extra lands, etc. But I think overall the matchup's going to come down to just like sequencing and who can hit their land drops and keep a smooth draw overall.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of players in these kind of matchups that like very aggressively attacking the cantrips as a way to facilitate the land destruction element that both of these decks have. So you see people sideboard in potentially Red Elemental Blast or Pyroblast or Flusterstorms or even Spell Pierces to try to fight over cards like Ponder and like Brainstorm to make the Wastelands and Stifles even more devastating.
Yeah, I like fighting over Brainstorm, particularly on turns 2 through 5. I don't really want to fight over Ponder ever, since it's much harder for Ponder to actually give you a leg up in many scenarios. Like, you can find very specific cards with Ponder, you can make sure you hit land drops with Ponder, but Brainstorm can actively turn other cards into lands if you need them, or turn lands into spells if you need them. So a much stronger card and a much bigger target for things like Flusterstorm and Spell Pierce.
Game 2, about to get underway. Stephen Mann here was, as often happens in Delver Mirrors, blown up by a wasteland. Michael Majors breaking serve, our second overall seed on the draw.
Going to be on the draw again for this game more than likely. I can't imagine it's ever correct to draw on a rug match or in a Delver mirror.
In the 0 and 1 mana Stone Rain mirror, it feels like being on the play is pretty important.
Yeah, agreed. So hopefully this game for Steve Mann, he's going to have a draw featuring multiple lands instead of just the one. Assuming he doesn't get wastelanded, he maybe actually be able to cast some spells, and we can make a real match of this.
I think it's really critical for Steven on the play to sort of leverage the tempo advantage his deck has, as I don't think the late game favors him very much. He's facing down more True Name Nemesis in the other deck. He's facing down Stoneforge Mystic in the other deck. Just more power in Michael Majors' deck, so really important for Steven to get off to a good start.
Yeah, I mean, if the game goes for, a lot of turns, if both players hit a lot of land drops, not a whole lot of, Stifle and Wasteland action, cards like Stoneforge Mystic and True Name Nemesis really shine. And Steven's job in this matchup is just to make sure that those cards don't actually get online, because once they do, it's really hard for them to get out of that sort of a situation. So that's going to be key for Steven in this matchup.
All right, so both players keep 7. Steven leading off the action with a Tropical Island and a Ponder.
Yeah, I hate mulliganing in Legacy, but one of the coolest things about Legacy is being able to mulligan to 5 and sometimes even lower and still having a chance to win, simply because of how powerful some of the cards in Legacy are.
And inexpensive, too.
Yeah.
Michael Majors taking a play out of your playbook and just snapping him off on the draw here.
That's not a play on my playbook. My playbook is if my opponent plays Delver on turn 1, then I break land or break with the Wasteland, because when they ponder, they're almost always going to just make sure they have an extra land on top. They're never going to keep a one-lander ponder and then not shuffle away if there's a land on top.
So Michael pursuing an even more aggressive line with that Wasteland, but you see Steven with a Polluted Delta sacrificing it and finding Tropical Island.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a huge downside to wastelanding there if he doesn't have a whole lot to do. It looked like his hand was full of 1-mana removal spells. Looks like he has a Ponder, maybe a Delver of Secrets of his own, but taking the really aggressive line of, if my opponent just randomly doesn't have another land or all of his other lands are wastelands, I can maybe just free roll the win in the finals here.
So Michael Majors with a Volcanic Island and a Ponder.
Yeah, Steven Mann with it looks like a pair of wastelands in his hand. Potentially going to put Michael really on the back foot, since Mongoose cannot be targeted by any of the removal in Michael Majors' deck. So Michael Majors definitely going to have to put some bigger threat into play to actually play defense against Nimble Mongoose, or once he hits 7 cards in the bin, it's going to be a real threat to his life total.
So Majors also keeps with his Ponder. Steven Mann goes to his turn, draws. Nimble Mongoose in play, 3 cards in graveyard.
There's a shot of an innocent Michael Majors who's about to get violated by Wasteland. It's a sad day.
Wasteland targets Volcanic Island. 4 cards now in Steven's graveyard. Michael Majors, no permanents in play, and a follow-up Nimble Mongoose. Majors draws for his turn.
I mean, he has a Wasteland, but now it's not looking nearly as promising a play, simply because he's staring down 2 creatures from the opponent's side who could very quickly become 3/3s. Obviously, he's not under a lot of pressure as they are currently 1/1s, but that can change in a hurry with just fetch land into Brainstorm, into Gitaxian Probe, or something similar.
So Michael breaking the fetch land here, finds Tundra and Delver of Secrets.
Yeah, I mean, Delver could potentially trade with Mongoose, but it seems unlikely if Steven has any sort of combination of cards that involves a fetch land. However, if he doesn't have another land, which I don't think I saw one in his hand other than maybe a Wasteland, it could be hard for him to actually turn on Threshold this turn, and he doesn't actually want to trade, too much here, but it might be a necessary evil.
Steven Mann offering it up here, sending his 2 1/1 Nimble Mongooses into Delver of Secrets.
Yeah, I mean, if I were Michael, I would just snap it off, because I don't think there's a combination of cards that puts 3 cards in the graveyard, and you're on the back foot, and your removal doesn't actually kill his creatures. So all these reasons lead me to believe that it's probable that Michael should have traded given the option.
So another wasteland here from Steven.
Yeah, and this is just brutal. Going to really need to flip the Delver of Secrets here to potentially block a 3/3 Nimble Mongoose in a moment, but looks like we drew a creature, which is not a land, and that's pretty bad for Michael.
Stoneforge missing the draw for Michael.
Well, we have the potential to Lightning Bolt or Swords to Plowshares the opposing Delver of Secrets. I assume it will be a Swords to Plowshares to prevent the potential for Nimble Mongoose to grow to maximum size next turn.
Yeah, Steven with 5 cards in graveyard, so not very far away from achieving threshold.
Yeah, Steven really desperately needs to draw a red mana source, preferably a fetch land into Volcanic Island to get him a little bit closer to threshold.
Delver trigger going on the stack, and Steven's going to brainstorm.
Yeah, no, from what Majors looks like he's got going on in his hand, I feel like that's going to resolve. Though it's possible in response he just Swords to Plowshares the Delver of Secrets. An interesting decision for Michael, but I feel like he should try to play around Daze as much as possible. But he can't play around it right now, but he could play around the potential drawing of Daze off of the Brainstorm.
The ship has kind of sailed for Michael to play around many things here as he's firmly on the back foot. Brainstorm resolves.
Yep, and there's a Daze right off the top, so second Daze right off the top. The Volcanic Island. I feel like those are all really good cards for Steven to draw.
The Volcanic Island especially critical here as he has 2 Lightning Bolts in hand, no way to shuffle his deck, and so were there no red source of mana in that top 3, this could have possibly turned around for Michael, although still, again, firmly on the back foot.
Yeah, so Steven also hasn't drawn for the turn, so he basically only has to put 1 card back. I feel like this is going to be Volcanic Island, excuse me, Bolt the Delver, Daze whatever your next play is, battle for 6 twice, bolt you to death.
And so the Mongoose has come across, knocking Majors down to 9.
So it looks like that Steven's going to force a game 3. If that's the case, it's going to be interesting to see how Michael takes the play in game 3. You know, when you're playing a deck that has more mana-intensive cards than your opponent in an attrition battle, mostly focused around mana, being on the play is really important because playing stuff like Stoneforge Mystic on the play is much stronger against Daze because then you're setting your opponent back a land drop, hopefully resolving a True Name Nemesis. But here it looks like Daze is going to happen, and then Lightning Bolt's going to happen, and that's all she wrote.
Daze targets the Stoneforge Mystic, it resolves, and now Steven with a clear path here, untaps draws, knocks Majors down to 3. We should see Volcanic Island and Lightning Bolt, and we're going on to a 3rd game.
Yeah, really solid play there by Steven Mann. Michael Majors, I think, made a small misplay by not trading a Delver of Secrets early on with a Nimble Mongoose, perhaps afraid of some shenanigans that could potentially turn on the threshold of the Nimble Mongoose, but I can't imagine a sequence of spells that involves turning on the Nimble Mongoose there with only access to 1 mana. Perhaps he just assumed that Steven was a little stuck on things to do and wouldn't be able to actually turn them on. Maybe want to try to eventually swing the game in his favor and use the Delver to his advantage, but multiple Wastelands from Steven really just plugged Michael as far as mana is concerned and put him into a situation where he was no longer able to block and kill a Nimble Mongoose, and it really bit him.
And that's been the story so far of this finals, as both players have spent a turn being basically incapacitated by Wasteland. In the first game, Steven was having some troubles. Besides that, he never really had a second land or anything that impactful to do, just a handful of creatures. But Wasteland in these mana light, there's 4 Wastelands in each of these decks, and they're both playing, you know, what is it, 18, 19 lands? We're not talking a lot about a lot of mana, and so Wasteland is definitely going to be the determiner in a lot of these games. We look at the sideboard again, Steven Mann, 2 Grafdigger Sages, 2 Grimlavancers, a True Name Nemesis, a Flush of Storm, 3 Pyroblast, a Spell Pierce, 3 Submerge, a Surgical Extraction, and Vendilion Click. We've been talking a lot about the potential impact for True Name Nemesis in these games, but we really haven't even seen a player effectively get to 3 mana yet. I guess Michael kind of incidentally did in the first game,
Yeah.
but it was determined by, the outcome of that game was determined by different stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying earlier, I think that being on the play for Michael is going to be really important for Game 3. It makes all of his more expensive threats like Stoneforge Mystic and True Name Nemesis that much better. Because, if his opponent does happen to have a daze early on to counter one of his threats, it's going to set his opponent back on lands. And as you can see, Wasteland and bottlenecking your opponent on mana is really an easy path to victory in this kind of a matchup where you're both fighting over a lot of really cheap spells and you're both really just hammering home your opponent on very little mana while also keeping them on very little mana.
Game 3 of the finals about to get underway here between Michael Majors and Stephen Mann. Michael Majors will be on the play.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see a game that goes past like turn, or sure the games have been going past turns 5 and 6, but I want to see a game that genuinely goes past turns 5 and 6 to see if the Rug Delver deck can actually keep pace with the Blue Red White Delver deck, seeing as the Blue Red White Delver deck is built to handle the late game stuff, more so than the Rug Delver deck, simply because of cards like Stoneforge Mystic, True Name Nemesis, Batter Skull, and Umezawa Shite.
Yeah, we have had the games go past that point, but not in a significant way. It's been about, one player's incapacitated and then the other player is slowly killing them. Both players haven't been trading punches for that many turns of the game.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's really smart on Steven's part to kind of force the issue as far as like how he's sideboarding and just in general how his deck is constructed and how he's supposed to win this matchup. If he's ever allowing Michael to get to land drops 4, 5, and 6, that's actually really bad for him because then Michael's able to play all of his spells around Daze and Spell Pierce and things like that, and it allows his late game cards to actually just take a hold of the game. Because let me tell you what, True Name Nemesis kind of laughs at Nimble Mongoose.
Yeah. Batter Skull also.
Yes, Batter Skull also laughs at Nimble Mongoose. Looks like Major is taking a mulligan here. Steven Mann may also take a mulligan. His hand looks pretty mana heavy with, it looks like 4 or 5 lands, one of which is a Wasteland. Looks like he had a Lightning Bolt and 2 Nimble Monkeys. He could potentially go turn 1 Mongoose, turn 2 Wasteland Mongoose, turn 3 Bolt, whatever you play, or something similar. But not the greatest hand, but it's okay to keep mana-heavy hands in this kind of a matchup because of how important Wasteland is.
Yeah, we've seen it so far in the 2 games, and especially with your opponent mulliganing and you have a Wasteland in your hand, I feel it's really hard to get away from any sort of reasonable hand.
Yeah, and this could be one of my favorite types of games in Delver Mirrors where Michael Majors does not have a dig spell on turn 1 and just goes turn 1 Delver Secrets with only 1 land and gets Wastelanded, and then the game's over.
Snap them off.
Those are my favorite. I don't know why. I just like to see pain. Maybe that says a little bit about me.
That's part of the experience of playing Legacy, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's happened to me so much that I just, when other people experience it, I feel a sort of kinship, but also a sort of twisted justice.
Yeah, it's some sort of cathartic release.
Yeah. I'm not the only one who's getting completely obliterated by this card. That makes me feel better.
There's something about shared suffering builds camaraderie.
Oh no, a mulligan to 5 here in the finals for Michael Majors. Not looking so good, especially considering Steven Mann has 2 of the better creatures for his deck in the matchup in Nimble Mongoose, assuming he can eventually turn them into 3/3s. But with the way his hand looks, he's going to need a little help with things like Brainstorm, Cataxian Probe, Ponder to actually turn them on. But Michael Majors is going to be really low on resources. Probably a dream hand at 5 for Majors is going to be like Stoneforge Mystic, 4 lands. That's gonna be my guess.
And once Blue-White Red Delver hit the scene after Owen Turnwald's win in Grand Prix DC, a lot of people consider Rug Delver to basically be invalidated, that people were still going to play it because of card accessibility issues or the fact that they owned it. But there are still some charms to play in this deck, and I think Nimble Mongoose is very high on this list. Very durable threat, and part of your game plan about getting underneath people quickly. The Blue-White Red Delver deck bumbles around a little bit. When it doesn't have Delver of Secrets, it's a little slow out of the gates. Rug Delver much more consistent and streamlined in applying early pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. When True Name Nemesis came out, I just assumed that Tarmogoyf was no longer a Magic card. It was just supplanted by this 3-mana card that either was just a much better win condition for similar decks, or just out of, like the Esper Deathblade decks, it was just a threat that they could never deal with. Incidentally, that was not the case because Reg Delver continues to thrive amidst, a top 8 full of various True Name Nemesis decks or decks that just incidentally play True Name Nemesis. So,
All right, so Michael keeps his 5-card hand, leads off with Gataxian Probe, sees 2 Nimble Mongooses, a Lightning Bolt, and 4 lands. 2 of them are fetch lands, a Volcanic Island, and a Wasteland.
yeah, I mean, this is not the best hand from Steve Mann, but as we said, I think that the matchup revolves around, at least in the early turns of the game, just making sure you hit your land drops. And if you're able to apply pressure to the board while potentially wastelanding your opponent, it's a great place to start. Majors here, looks like he has a hand with Delver of Secrets, Daze, Tundra, Stoneforge Mystic, Lightning Bolt. So if Steve Mann just decides to break him off on turn 1, things could get ugly.
Tropical Island, the draw for Steven. Already a little bit on the land heavy side.
Yeah, but I mean, a single brainstorm can completely turn that around, simply due to the nature of the card. Brainstorm can effectively turn any card in your hand into a random card off the top of your deck, and if you just so happen to draw multiple spells, you get rid of those lands and cash them in for good stuff. Break them off. Break them off. Break them off. The really cool thing here is that if Majors never draws another land, or at least for a few turns, a turn 1 Wasteland into turn 2 Lightning Bolt effectively just ends the game. It even shuts down the Daze out of Michael Majors' hand, so it's very awkward that this is one of the prime spots for the play that I want to make. But if Majors happens to draw another land, then potentially your Lightning Bolt gets Daze next turn, and then you could just end up being in a lot of trouble. So my line of play is pretty dangerous sometimes, but I like living on the edge. So.
And Nimble Mongoose
I'm a
deployed
rebel.
by Steven.
Yeah, and opting not to Daze, which I think is pretty smart. It's not a really important spell at this juncture in the game, but the fact that he did not reveal off of Delver and he's not going to play a land this turn. Oh, he did have a Scalding Tarn. I thought that... Is that what he drew for the turn, or did he draw Delver of Secrets?
It was Delver of Secrets, I think.
Okay.
It's possible.
Maybe I just misread his hand. My apologies.
So it's possible last turn that Michael was actually trying to even induce Steven into using his Wasteland there.
That's possible. And I think this is a spot where he definitely does not want to trade Nimble Mongoose for a Delver of Secrets because just the way that this game is going to play out, Michael Majors' easiest path to victory on this mulligan to 5 is just to flip Delvers and attack. Unfortunately, his Daze is not going to be countering that Lightning Bolt, so one of his Delvers is going to die, but if he flips his Delver early, he's going to have a much better clock than Steven, so. Yeah, and Steven recognizes that, is more than willing to trade a Mongoose for a Delver of Secrets at this juncture, but...
Steven offers up, and Michael says no.
Yep. I have a pretty good idea how this turn's going to play out. I think Steven's going to play a Lightning Bolt first to play around the Daze, or a Daze. He doesn't necessarily know that Michael has it, and then he's going to play Mongoose, and he doesn't mind that getting Daze too much.
And with Michael with only 2 cards in hand, is Steven's incentive to play around things in general kind of goes down.
Well, I actually think it kind of goes up in some respect. If you can play around Daze, your opponent has very few spells that can actually matter to you at the moment, Daze being one of them. It's very unlikely that Michael has too many Force of Wills left in his deck, and even if he does have a Force of Will, he has a 2-for-1 himself, leaving himself with 0 cards in hand and just trying to blind flip Delvers. And, that's a pretty dangerous prospect to be in. But
it depends how many, hits Steven's willing to take and how many contortions he has to go through to play around this Daze.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like Steven would be best off here by just, playing the Volcanic Island, casting Lightning Bolt, playing around the Daze somewhat, and then not really caring if his Nimble Mongoose gets dazed and playing that into a Daze if Michael wants to do that.
I do agree with you, but the best place to start appears to be just blunt some of the aggression here and take care of one of these Delvers. But Steven's going to go another way and plays Nimble Mongoose.
All right, and assuming that Michael, has a Stoneforge Mystic in hand, he would have cast it last turn more than likely. So, especially seeing with the Gitaxian Probe the turn before that there was no daze. But keeping him potentially off of a top deck Stoneforge Mystic could be important since he does only have access to the one Lightning Bolt, and the Force of Will kind of rotting his hand because he doesn't have access to another blue card. So
We're going to see Michael here respond with a fetch land. And what's also nice about this sequence from Steven is it gives him the opportunity next turn to play Lightning Bolt and play around the days that he's theoretically playing around here as well.
I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm really, really hoping that he does not daze his own Lightning Bolt.
Oh, wow. He's bolting in response and then dazing. He feels he really needs to keep this land, I guess. His best draw here is Stoneforge Mystic, I suppose. So this is a really bold line by Michael, but...
Yeah, I mean, he did mold a 5. He's not going to get too much value out of either of those cards at the moment, I don't think. And he just wants to flip those guys. Oh. And if he doesn't, he wants to be able to cast a spells like the Stoneforge Mystic that he drew.
Stoneforge Mystic off the top for Michael.
He just looks like a mad genius right now. Crazy, crazy genius.
What a play by Michael, and immediately draws the best card to reward him here.
Yeah, there are a few words in the English language to describe the situation, but I think the prime one is justice.
Yeah, making a play that aggressive, you deserve to be immediately rewarded after your mulligan to 5.
Yeah, so Stoneforge Mystic here coming down. Gonna go get Batterskull 99% of the time. I can't imagine Jite is very good against a pair of Nimble Mongoose. But Steve Mann, just a handful of lands, a Lightning Bolt, and a Force of Will. Unfortunately, that Bolt is going to take care of the Stoneforge Mystic to prevent... oh, wow. So I guess he's anticipating a Lightning Bolt here from Steven. And if he got Batterskull, that would be pretty detrimental.
Put yourself in Michael's shoes here for a minute. Let's imagine that your Stoneforge Mystic dies. If you get Umezawa's Jite online, you can win this game just by flipping your Delvers and gaining 4 life a turn. That's enough to swing the race.
Yeah, I mean, that's reasonable. And he did actually know of the Lightning Bolt in Steven's hand from the Gitaxian Probe on turn 1. So that's actually a pretty heads-up play. You know, now the Delvers are way more likely to be the target of the Lightning Bolt. However, you know, they aren't flipped yet, and there's a potential for them to just never flip. And you would want, you know, something like Umezawa's Jite to get online eventually, whereas a Batterskull would never get online once your Stoneforge Mystic was bolted.
Right, and let's assume that, let's say Steven does kill one of the Delvers for this reason, then there's the enormous risk of Michael just drawing the Batterskull in the deck.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a crazy top deck for sure, but... yeah. All right, well, yeah, Steven is playing around that by main phase killing the Stoneforge Mystic and then jamming with his 2 Mongoose, still just crossing his fingers that the Delvers never flip. If they do, I think the game will probably end on the spot, but unluckily for Majors, that is not happening. So this mulligan to 5, I'm sure in his head, he feels like he's drowning a little.
Yeah.
You know, you've mulliganed to 5, you're having to fight through all this stuff from your opponent. Your Delvers aren't flipping. You know, he seemingly has the correct answers at the right times. However, just one flip of the card could completely change everything. So this game, it still has a ways to go.
Umezawa's Jite hit by Force of Will, and Steven's hand is just 3 lands. I mean, he can get the threshold with these Nimble Mongooses pretty soon, especially if he draws a spell, but if Michael finds a spell on top of the deck, this race is swung so fast.
Yeah, I mean, right now, Steve Mann a little ahead on the race thanks to Gitaxian Probe, a few more fetch lands from Michael, and here it comes. All right, so the first one's not going to flip. He has the option to draw the spell or to, with the other trigger on the stack, fetch before he reveals for the second Delver, giving him a virtual second chance at just hitting for the other Delver. So.
Michael Majors, in the process of really sculpting a beautiful game here after this mulligan to 5, has found the lines of play to give him a shot. And if these Delvers had flipped sooner, we could be already handing him the trophy.
Yeah, and with that stands, you know, Steven Mann, even though he kept what I thought was a reasonable hand, is definitely flooding out here. Definitely needs to draw a Ponder, a Brainstorm, even like a Wasteland would be fine because he could potentially Wasteland his own land and turn on his Nimble Mongoose. And if Michael never flips his other Delvers, then you know, his Mongoose could win the race pretty easily. So Michael bricks again, and it looks like he's just going to jam him sideways for 2 and hope that Steven can't get threshold next turn, or else this race is going to be completely one-sided.
And we're also hitting the stage of the game where Michael can also just draw and cast True Name Nemesis and really lock this one up.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a huge top deck at the moment for him. Another Nimble Mongoose by Steve Mann. He only has 4 cards in the graveyard as of this moment. Only the potential to put 1 more into the yard from play. I think he has another fetch land in hand that he could play as his land for the turn to potentially get up to 6. So any fetch land, wasteland, or non-creature spell next turn should be able, or I guess he could draw an awkward one like Daze or something. But
He has a lot of hits for sure.
yeah, most outs in his deck, and with Michael at 9, oh man, just never flipping Delvers ever. Just has to be
Back-to-back lands.
Yeah, that's really disappointing. Michael fighting as hard as he possibly can, using every resource at his disposal, even dazing his own lightning bolt to save one of his own lands early on in the game, and just never able to flip these Delver of Secrets. And this to me, this really feels like how I feel whenever I play Delver of Secrets in Modern. You know, they never flip.
And for whatever the outcome of this game, Michael has a lot to be proud of for the way that he's navigating this one.
Yeah, I agree. And you can see it on his face. He knows that he's in a lot of trouble. Like, basically any spell out of Steve's deck is going to turn on the Nimbles and just completely turn this game around. But if by some miracle Steve Mann just draws another dual land, perhaps a Daze or a Force of Will or some counter spell that's a reactive, even Stifle turns it on because he can... that was a bold block.
Well, that does lock up Threshold here for Steven. That's the critical thing.
Okay, that actually changes things. Okay, well, I feel like with so many outs in your deck, you can just force him to chump block with the other Delver, and taking 1 when you're at 13, I guess he's just locking up Threshold for sure, as opposed to potentially, giving himself the, 6 bricks or whatever.
Sure.
I guess he has more than 6. Can actually fetch out 2 of his bricks right now before he draws. So
I feel like the biggest risk on that block right there is if Michael's draw that turn had been True Name Nemesis, then it would have been it's really critical for Steven to keep as many Nimble Mongooses in play as possible to try to generate 1 big alpha strike.
Yeah.
But I think this is a much better hedge in the world where Michael does not draw True Name Nemesis.
Yeah, so locked for Threshold here, going to be attacking for 6. Drew a Ponder, potentially drawing a lethal Lightning Bolt here off the Ponder to end the game this turn, or assuming that Michael doesn't chump block, which I don't think he possibly can. I think his outs here are Ponder Bricks. He reveals a Ponder Brainstorm to the Delver, flips it, hits a True Name Nemesis, and then is able to block and or trade.
So Steven, with this Ponder,
I see a Volcanic Island, but I can't see the other 2 cards.
has a fetch land in play, so if there's one good one in here, Steven can afford to keep this Ponder instead of shuffle.
I believe one of those cards is Tarmogoyf, and I think that should all but close this game out if he just casts Tarmogoyf and has a 3rd creature.
Again, almost certainly Michael without a targeted removal spell in his hand, as he has not flipped these Delvers the entire game.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious that the last card in his hand is a land because he didn't flip his Delvers, and if it was a creature, he most certainly would have played it. It's possible that it was a Batterskull as the last card, which actually could be a little problematic for Steven if that was the case. But at this point, I think you just have to assume that it's the, 85-90% to be a land versus the Batterskull or whatever.
So, threshold achieved.
All right, and it looks like we drew the 4th Nimble Mongoose, so we're going to be crashing in here for 6. I don't think it's possible for Majors to win if he blocks. So it looks like he's going to go down to 3 as he recognizes this. A Wasteland keeps him off of the Batterskull, which would be his only out at this point. And that looks like that's going to take the trophy home.
True Name Nemesis is still a draw here. True Name Nemesis is still alive.
Oh, I thought that Steven had a Mongoose, and I think he should have played it. Maybe
no, his last card in hand is Tropical Island.
I don't I don't know. I guess I misread.
But Trinity Nemesis is still a live draw. Of course, Michael has a major uphill battle, even if he finds it here, but he's not dead just yet.
Yeah, and Steven playing around Batterskull as one of the few outs that Michael could have. I'm pretty sure he had a Tarmogoyf on top of his deck and opted to Wasteland this turn instead. So, Brainstorm, not a bad one. Very few cards in the deck that are better than that.
Draws. It stays.
It's Reb and
It's
a
called
land.
Tarn, and that will do it.
Yep.
Nothing to provide any defense to the Nimble Mongooses. Stephen Mann, congratulations. You're a StarCityGames.com Legacy Open champion here in Atlanta. Well-earned tournament win, first overall seed, ran through the elimination rounds, and congratulations to Michael Majors as well. Second place finish, and